How's it going, guys? Today I'm checking out my friend Mitchell's awesome collection of reptiles. Lots of rare dragons and other cool critters, so hope you guys enjoy.
So cute. This guy's just, I think, a week old. I guess what got me into reptiles was probably in uni. I was doing environmental science, and I looked at doing fish, and I was actually on the pathway to looking at marine fish and studying marine fish and marine invertebrates, things like that. And one day we had a lecture about reptiles, and I was like, oh, these guys are kind of cool. Like, I enjoyed it, and yeah, it just sort of became a wormhole from there, and just really fell into it. Really found it interesting. Really got inspired to keep lizards, and yeah, now I'm got a house full of them. So this is my main reptile room. It's where I keep probably the bulk of my collection. So, and most of which is small dragon lizards. So this is my adult pair of Jacky Dragons, Amphibolurus muricatus. These guys were actually the first lizard species I kept, and they're pretty near and dear to my heart. So at the moment I'm actually doing a PhD on them as well, looking at their thermal biology. So I'll be spending the next few years really, I guess, cooking these guys and finding out some interesting questions about their thermal biology. So they're really awesome dragon species to keep if you're looking at keeping a bit of a different small dragon. These guys are the way to go, I think.
And they go good outside almost like anywhere.
Yeah, oh,
they're so super adaptive.
So yeah, down in this tank here we've got a pair of yellow Ridgetail Monitors. So these are Varanus acanthurus. These guys are relatively new to me. They're actually from a friend of our family that's moving out of reptiles. But this pair of Ridgetails is actually, by his count, about 12 to 13 years old. And they're still laying eggs and going strong. Really awesome species to keep. Again, if you're looking at getting into small monitors, they're ones to go for. So also got a couple of beauties, central beauties that is. I'm not too fussed on them, but my family really do love them. They are great family pets, but yeah, central beauties.
That's all you need to say on them.
Yeah, they don't need more attention. So these are my Burns dragons here. This is a adult female who actually laid a clutch a few weeks ago, and hopefully she's gearing up for clutch number 2. And then her scaredy cat male partner down the bottom here. These guys are really cool. They're very closely related to the Jacky Dragon. They do get slightly bigger, and they've got these awesome white stripes down their chin. They're also slightly more arid.
They look very similar, that's for sure.
This girl here is called Spicy because she's a real spicy animal. But yeah, they're awesome to keep. And it took me a fair bit of time to find some, but I'm happy I've got them. This is Isis. He's probably my favourite Ridgetail of all the Ridgetails we have. Beautiful yellow little colour, and he's really fun to play with when he wants to play. He's also really fun to feed. He's a very good active hunter. So yeah, I do quite like him.
Really nice yellows.
Yeah. He's just, if you can see there, he's got a bit of a shed at the back there, but that's his real colour. That sort of bluey browny colour, or blue blacky colour. And then that nice yellow contrast, but he's absolute cracker monitor. If anyone's got a nice looking girl to go with him, I'm always after some more. So here we've got some central noted dragons. I don't actually know anything specific about the locale of these guys, but they've actually got some nice, really red heads. And a lot of people sort of say that's the southwest Queensland sort of colour variation. So it seems that southwest Queensland does have that nice red head and black body, and as you move further west you get the Northern Territories are much more orange and black. And then even further west into WA, they've got black with sort of big orange reticulations and things like that. Very cool species for anyone wanting to keep a small arid dragon. This particular pair are pretty skittish and aren't really a good representation of most of them. However, it's a pretty cool day. The female's actually dug a burrow and is starting to nest right now, so hopefully by the end of the filming session we might be able to see some eggs.
So in here we have the pink tongue skinks.
So yeah, I've got a trio in here.
Yep.
These guys are yeah, I think just under 2 years old. It's a pretty cool little bioactive setup I've got going for them. So I've got a few ficus, and I can't remember the species name, but it's basically the tree version of the ficus pumanella. And this cool other little plant that I found at Bunnings. I really like.
Good old Bunnings.
And a Dracaena, I think this is.
Nice.
But I think it just works really well. I'm trying with this tank something a bit different. I'm actually using a non-Arcadia brand bowl. I'm just using a standard LED spotlight and seeing how that goes. And I mean, it's going okay for plant growth and plants living. It's not as good as the Arcadias, but at, I think, $11 a pair, it's definitely a bit of a cost save.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's really cool about it is that the pink tongues actually, instead of basking in, say, the heat spot, seem to preferentially select the white light spot. And I think that kind of makes a really good point about natural light in enclosures. Like, animals really do prefer that natural white light over crappy blue tinge UV or just the midday red from...
So you don't give these guys any UV?
I do take them out for a bit of sun. I do try and get things out for the sun. But in all honesty, I don't give them a heap of UV. I do advocate to everyone try and give them as much UV as you can, but these guys I haven't.
So in here is the...
Western netted dragons. So that's Ctenophorus reticulatus. They're pretty cool little agamids, and they're fairly uncommon here on the East Coast. There are a few of them around, but they're definitely more common in WA, where they can be legally wild collected and are being captively bred at the moment. What's really cool about these guys is that both sexes are really patterned, but they're quite sexually dimorphic. So that means they both look quite different. So this is a young female. She's a bit feisty, but as you can tell, she's got a nice pattern along the back there and a beautiful yellow throat.
Beautiful.
And she's quite fat.
And she had eggs this season?
So she hasn't had eggs this season. These guys have actually, they do get a lot bigger than this.
Yep.
I've had a bit of a dilemma. They're not growing as quickly as I would have liked.
Yep.
I had another female that unfortunately had reproductive issues. Sorry for the noise.
Yeah.
She grew significantly quicker.
Interesting. Oh, beauty.
Here he is. This is the male.
So good. I personally think they're so much cooler than the central netteds.
I think in many ways they're
they're really similar, but
like I think the issue with central netteds is there's so many crappy looking centrals out there that it's kind of floods the market. There are some really good centrals.
Like yours.
Yeah, I like mine. Yeah. But like, there's another guy I've seen in Western Sydney that's got some absolute cracker Northern Territory ones that look awesome. If I wasn't trying to keep less centrals, because I've already got I think like 11 or 12 or something, I'd get another tank for those guys and try and get some off him. Yeah. So these guys here are Laverton ringtail dragons, Chenophorus infans. They're a relatively cool species. There aren't too many ringtails around, so actually quite recently, as of December, I think it was 2016, they used to be Ctenophorus caudicinctus, and then they split them all into, there were 6 subspecies and they got split into 4 different species. And they actually still think that one of the species could be 2 cryptic species. So it's quite a messy little complex. Yep. But they are really cool animals, and they're actually probably some of my favourite Ctenophorus dragons. They've got loads of personality. They're fairly non-destructive with their environment, and they're little pigs. They love to eat. Yeah. The males are also not particularly aggressive to each other. These guys were raised together and brought up together, but they've easily become one of my favourite little agamids. And they've got beautiful, when they're breeding season, the males will get a black chest.
Yeah.
And they've also got nice reds and oranges and browns sort of through them, rusty desert colours. And yeah, these guys are found, as I understand it, predominantly in the goldfields, and they're the smallest of the ringtail dragon complex.
Wow.
So they, I think only just, the other species do get slightly larger. Plus they're bloody fast when they want to be.
Yeah.
One thing to anyone keeping small dragons, as a side note, be prepared that they're going to get everywhere. So like, the golden rule of elapids is know where the snake is in the enclosure before you get it out. Same thing applies with these guys.
Yep.
Not because it's going to bite you, but because they'll be out the door in a heartbeat. So in here we've got king's monitors. or long-tailed rock monitors, as some people call them, Varanus kingorum. These are definitely becoming one of my favourite monitor species too. Basically what they are is they're found in the Northern Territory in WA, just into WA. This is their adult size, so I've got a male and female pair here. And they're absolute little bulldogs. They love running around, they sort of get up on their legs and sort of strut their stuff. Really active predators, really fun. At the moment they're probably a bit slaggy because it's not too warm in there. We've had a recent spate of hot days, so I've actually lowered the wattage of their heat bulb. But really easy to keep. I mean, some people would probably argue the enclosure I've got them in here is probably a bit too big. But they really are just an awesome species. Back in the day they were very much an expensive species and limited by that, so they're about $1.5 grand each. Nowadays you can pick them up for probably under 400, and I've got mine for under 400.
Wow.
So I think they'll definitely become a really popular species.
Nice.
The other thing that unfortunately limits them is that in some states they're on a restricted license and not licensed. I think in many ways they're less of a commitment than a ridgetail. And obviously not going to bite you as hard. They're fairly prolific in the hobby, so hopefully with licensing changes in the future they will be made more accessible.
Nice.
Because there's no reason they shouldn't be kept by beginners. So these guys at the top here are my red-barred dragons, Ctenophorus vadnappa. They're definitely a damn cool species, is really all I can say. Like a lot of the small dragons, obviously they're small. But the thing that's really cool about them is that the males get probably some of the most striking coloration in, I guess, all the Australian lizards.
One of the nicest coloured dragons in Australia, I'd say.
Yeah, oh, absolute cracker. And I mean, captive ones definitely don't look as good as wilds. I haven't seen wild ones myself, but I've seen photos. And a lot of people that have kept both or seen both have said that there's definitely the wild ones just pop so much more.
It's like every species is like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Because there's just so much variation out there.
Yeah. The personality on these guys as well.
Yeah.
The colours on the male are still absolutely cracker. Females are much more dull. They're like a browny sort of colour with a bit of orange coloration around the neck. But the males are still absolutely stunning. So they got blues, yellows, reds, oranges, blacks, and quite distinctively so. Like it's not, you know, a red bearded dragon. It's a red. They're very active. They're a bit of a pain in the ass to clean, just because they love to jump around when you stick your hand in the tank. But yeah, absolutely awesome species, and I think these guys are definitely one of the small dragons I ticked for becoming more popular in the coming years. So this is a central netted male. This is kind of what I was saying before, that a lot of these animals can have absolutely striking coloration. Even though the westerns look really, really cool, I think a lot of centrals are underappreciated. So this guy's got this awesome red and orange head, and when he gets real feisty, he gets his little nuchal crest up there. Awesome little black.
Really red face too, like on the snout there.
Yeah. You might think that this guy looks a bit tubby and obese, but it's actually a thing with a lot of Ctenophorus dragons and other small dragons.
They just carry a lot of weight.
Well, they actually inflate up. They intentionally inflate up when they... So there, he's gone down a bit now. But they will sort of inflate themselves to look much bigger, so that they don't look as small and as tasty as they could be. But yeah, he's a real cool specimen. And I've got another western netted male just here, and this guy's slightly younger. So what actually happens with these guys, and you can still see it on him, when they hatch out they all look fairly similar, and then as they age the males will go through this sort of secondary sexual colour change, kind of like green tree pythons, and so you can still make out the remnants of that baby patterning just down there on the side as the orange and red and yellow sort of starts to come through in the spotting.
So nice. In here we got a western bearded dragon.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is Pogona minor. These guys, as you probably heard earlier, I'm not too fond of central bearded dragons. I keep a few of them, but they're not my love. These guys are absolute crackers. I love western beardeds. I think they're much cooler individuals. This little guy here is called Hiroshima. There's a bit of a running joke in our family. Not in poor taste. But yeah, so he's a western bearded dragon that I got a couple of years ago. He's always stayed quite small. I did get him with a female that unfortunately died due to, what's the term? Leukemia. She actually had bearded dragon equivalent of leukemia, as diagnosed by a vet for all the people out there. But yeah, so he survived, and he's just been an awesome little addition. He's got a lot of personality, and just a lovely animal to keep. And I'm actually keen to get some more of these soon. They're fairly rare in the eastern states. There are a few people that do keep them. However, some of them supplied quite dubiously. I don't quite know where they got them and whether they're good pathways. And the other ones that I've tried to hit up actually haven't had any success breeding them. So yeah, these are painted dragons, Ctenophorus pictus. Another cool little species that's sexually dimorphic, so males are much more brightly coloured than females. These were actually my first small dragon species I kept. Other than, oh no, I lie. First Ctenophorus dragon species I kept. I kind of fell in love with them, and yeah, I've kept them for a while. I've bred them a couple of years now.
Got a good little colony going in there. How many you got?
Yeah, so there's 8 in there at the moment. I'm actually planning, I've got another male from an unrelated line that I'm going to split the females and put him with. Just waiting for him to get a bit bigger. Ctenophorus dragons are usually quite good going together, even with a bit of size disparity. But I always like to be on the safer side.
Yeah.
Sweet. So there's some more of the central nodes I have. I've actually got a breeding group here of 3 females and a male. I've been told that they're NT locale, and it roughly lines up with what I know about the colour locales. Again, these guys are sort of not highly variable, but they are variable in the wild. And I guess the only way you can really get a conclusive idea of locale is if they were collected by you. Which in a number of circumstances in Australia is illegal. But yeah, so I got these off a mate. They're very awesome looking dragons. They're orange compared to my other ones, which are red-headed. And these guys have a little less black and more orange over the body. And we've actually, this is one of the first groups of dragons I've actually tried a nest box with. So I don't traditionally use nest box with dragons. But these guys were being a bit finicky, so I gave it a shot this time. And it's working relatively well. They've definitely nested in it. I actually had something recently where I was away for a month doing work for my PhD, and my parents were looking after my animals. And they said, oh, they hadn't laid. And in this nest box, I actually found a clutch of about 8 eggs that had been incubating away and grown veins and all that.
Yeah, right.
Which unfortunately, when I transitioned them to the incubator, died. But it was still cool. Like, I mean, it would have been absolutely awesome to have not done it and just realised and incubated them in situ.
Yeah.
That would have been real cool. But yeah, these guys, much more ballsy than the other dragons, the other netteds, and definitely real fun. This guy here is called Snubble, after the Pokemon.
He's beautiful. And very active.
Light bulb lick. No, he's going to try to jump the sides. So this is one of my female pygmy bearded dragons. I've actually only recently got into keeping these guys, and this lot I actually got 3 of them as I guess a rescue of sorts. But they're still lovely animals. They're just a bit munted in the tail and legs and stuff. And this girl's actually gravid at the moment, so I'll see if I can get a good angle there, but you can see there's little egg bulges coming through. These guys, oh no, take it out. These guys are quite prolific little breeders.
Yeah.
And they're a really great beginner dragon for people wanting a bearded dragon, but not something as big as a
I reckon
dragon.
They are like the best beginner dragon.
Yeah.
I rate them over central beardeds for sure, just because they're smaller, easier to care for, like because enclosure size, food costs, all that.
Well, I was gonna say they don't eat as much, and I think people don't realise that when they eat more, centrals eat a heap.
Yeah.
And they poop a lot, and you got to clean them more, and they're all messy. Yeah. These guys I find much more.
These are a much more positive experience in my personal experience.
But yeah, they're pretty awesome.
And they had some babies this season.
Yeah, so I've got some hatchlings from them, as well as come here, little ones. This is
so cute.
This guy's just I think a week old, just under a week old actually. But yeah, so as I said, they're pretty prolific clutches. They'll both be on their 4th clutch now, and they have about 20 in each clutch. I don't actually keep all the eggs from my dragons for these guys. They are pretty overbred. And I think it's the thing people need to sort of be more responsible about is that if you're going to breed a dragon, you need to make sure, or if you're going to breed any lizard, any animal, you need to make sure it's going to a decent home and you can sort of follow that up. And when you've got 80 baby lizards that you need to urgently move on to new homes, You can't guarantee somewhere decent. That's where you start cutting costs on how much you're selling them for. That's where just all the nasty things happen. You get toe nips, you get overpopulation.
You got to think before you breed. It's like, and if you're got too much going on, and then that's how things get released into the wild, and then invasive species, all that. It's just so many problems that come. Just really have a good think about what you're doing, how you're going to do it, what's going to happen from there when you're breeding.
I mean, I recommend to everyone I sell to that wants to sort of breed from the dragons I sell, not necessarily the more rare stuff that's in demand, but more so the common stuff like pygmies, centrals, even the netteds, is that just be careful with what you do. If you get a clutch, incubate, say, one clutch if it's a small clutch. If it's a large clutch, keep maybe only 10 eggs. Incubate them, have a go with them, have the experience of breeding, because it's hella fun. Like, I love doing it. But it gives you a bit more time to work it out rather than having 200 dragons. And I mean, I kid you not, from what I've seen on Facebook, there must be at least 400 to 800 bearded dragons being bred in Sydney at the moment.
Yeah.
So this is a adult female Varanus caudolineatus, or a striped-tailed monitor. These guys are very closely related to the popular Gillen's monitors, as well as the less well-known Bush's monitors, named after the very well-known Brian Bush. These guys, the striped-tailed monitor, are probably one of my favourite little arboreal monitors. Not that I've kept too many arboreal species. They're super cool. The guy I got them off actually described them to me as tree brevies, as in brevicorda, and he'd kept both, and he argued that he thought these were much better than brevicorda and much more active. And I can safely say that I love them. They're very active. They scurry up their rock walls, they hide under bark, and they're just such an awesome species to keep.
So how do you like to set these guys up?
So these guys, there you go. I very much, especially for arboreal things, I love having backgrounds for them, because they do use them, as you can see with both of them on the background.
There's one on there right now, yeah.
These guys, their main basking object's just a log, so they are found in sort of arid woodlands and semi-arid woodlands. I've got some bits of, I guess, fallen timber, and they actually do use these quite a lot as hides, so that little log down there they've burrowed under and got a little hide under there. They do sit regularly on this little side perch here, and they do climb up the little branches. Just here I've got a nest box as well. They do, and for this nest box as well, I've actually set it up so that instead of having the hole in the top, I've actually got it in the side here. And they do regularly enter that and use that quite a lot. Up until recently, I have been keeping these guys with a Merc vapor bulb. It's only in the past week I've actually moved them onto a heat bulb over a Merc vapor. And that's just because my Merc vapor blew. So these are my knobby dragons. These are Diporiphora knobby. Oh damn, they're fast little buggers. Try to get the male. There we go. So these guys are really cool. They get these two little vertebral stripes down there, which are sort of a yellowy greeny colour, and they get this lovely pink flush on their tail base, which is really, really cool. These guys are more of a limey green colour. There's a few colour varieties out there. So there's a far north Queensland type that's floating around that are a lot more brown. These guys, as I understand it, are more of a New South Wales form. The female here is early stages gravid, which is pretty cool. I'm really excited about it.
This is your first time breeding them?
Yes, yeah. So these guys, a lot of small dragons will breed, oh no. Yeah, so you can sort of see it there, the early egg bulges that are starting to come through, so hopefully she'll lay a clutch. But yeah, this is my first time breeding them, and I'm pretty excited. They are a fairly hard to come by little dragon. And again, another really good candidate for being housed outside. The guy actually got mine off, kept and housed his outside, and bred them, and he had awesome success.
Nice.
But yeah, awesome little lizard. This is an adult size, so it means you can keep them in fairly small enclosures. And they are very active. And oh man, I'm keen for it to pop. So these are Tommy Roundheads, Diporiphora australis. This is a male-female pair. As you can possibly see, I won't go for it because she's quite jumpy, but the female is gravid. So these guys have incredibly large clutch sizes. When kept well, for a dragon that small, they can have up to 11 eggs per clutch, and they can have over 5 clutches a season.
Wow.
Which is a pretty crazy reproductive effort from something like that. They're a really awesome small dragon to keep, and they're fairly new to me. I haven't kept these guys particularly long. I only got them at the start of this year. But they're fairly easily, I mean, they only need a small enclosure too, so they're quite easy maintenance wise, and they're very active as well. So these here are my two long-nosed dragons. I'm pretty sure their current taxonomy is Gowidon longirostris. Kind of been bounced around a few groups, but I'm pretty sure it's currently at Gowidon. These guys are pretty awesome. I've actually said to a few people I have a punt that they're going to be some of the next big captive small dragons for those wanting small arboreal ones. These guys are just really, really active. They're really, really ballsy, so they'll go out and sort of get prey from any sort of spot. And they're just absolutely stunning to look at. So not only do they have a long nose, but they've got an absolutely like humongous tail. I'd say their tail in many circumstances is at least, if not more than 3, snout vent lengths.
It's massive.
So it's really quite impressive. They're also sexually dimorphic between the sexes, so males definitely get that bit bigger and a bit chunkier in the head. And that female up in the top corner who's just basking away looks like she's early stages gravid too, which is quite cool. I haven't bred these guys yet, but I'm very keen to see if she lays some eggs. And the other side here, well, she's doing nothing too feisty. But she is a cool animal. They're really awesome to keep. They do need a bit more space for their size as compared to other small dragons, other small arboreal dragons. But they're by no means hard to keep. These tanks are just 60 by 60 by 90, and they go fine in them. You could probably do them in 60 by 45 by 90s. But yeah, all around they're fairly easy, low maintenance species. Very fast. I've had them get out before and they're a pain to catch. But well worth the love of keeping. These guys are one of the coolest dragons I keep. I've actually got my adults upstairs in a pit. This is a Crested Dragon, Ctenophorus, cristatus, there we go. Oops, calm down buddy. In the wild they're notorious for being a bicycle dragon, is one of their common names.
Yep.
It's because they'll go bipedal and just run at lightning fast speeds.
Little velociraptors.
These guys have awesome coloration of sort of yellows, orangey reds and blacks. In the wild, again, they're so much more pretty. But in captivity, they still retain some awesome colours. This is a young male I've actually got out cross line.
They don't colour up heaps till they're like adult sized, right?
Yeah. So this guy's still got a bit of growth to go. And I'm hoping to pair him with one of my females next season. He's a bit unhappy about being handled. The thing with a lot of small dragons is they're not handling lizards. They don't particularly enjoy it. I keep mine much more as display animals than that, except for these guys here, which are all in sort of grow out tubs. Oops. So this is Tina. She's one of my female Burton's legless lizards. Pretty cool species to keep. These guys are actually obligate lizard eaters in the wild, which means that in the wild they'll naturally eat other lizards. I actually don't like feeding mine lizards, and I have never fed these guys lizards in the year or so I've owned them. What I've been put onto, and I think is a really good way to keep them for those that don't like feeding lizards, is a tube feed mix. So you can do a tube feed. It does involve force feeding them. It's actually a fairly quick and fairly painless process for them. And they do reproduce, and I did have them reproduce last year. Unfortunately, Tina here's a bit thin at the moment just because I've been away for the past month. She's slowly putting weight back on, but unfortunately I don't think I'll get babies this year, which I mean is fine. I do enjoy keeping them just for the sake of keeping them.
You got a good enclosure here for them.
Yeah, so they're in a fully bioactive enclosure as well. Bloody love keeping them in this. They're probably one of the best species for it because they don't need to eat insects, obviously, so you don't need to worry about throwing food in there. Only thing that's frustrating about it is trying to find them in all the leaf litter. So
along with being addicted to lizards, Mitch also keeps a couple snakes.
So this is Echo. He's my diamond python. He's the first snake I've actually tried running in a bioactive enclosure, and it's been a bit hit and miss, to be honest. So definitely bioactive, like the cleanup crew and things like that, are going quite well. However, as I'm sure you can see, the plants are struggling a bit just with the heat. They are starting to bounce back, but they definitely can't deal with the high heat as well as the lizard tanks. Not that I'm keeping him really, really hot, it's just these heat emitters have a lot of ambient heat pumping out. Plus he's actually quite a big-bodied animal. So he does trash the plants a lot, as you can see from the bend there.
Trample them. bend them.
But it's really cool. Like, one of the things I will quickly say is that that peace lily in the corner is usually his favourite hide. So I bought him a brand new expensive hide. Never uses it. Just uses the peace lily.
Nice. I like how you can layer the enclosure like this. You got like that.
The ridge, yeah,
log there, and it comes up. If you can see that.
I can't actually take credit for that idea. I did steal it off an American bioactive YouTube page. I saw them do it and I was like, that's a brilliant idea. And so this is just actually at the local pet shop. They had cork bark on sale, and the cork bark, someone had knocked it off the shelf and shattered it, so I picked it up super cheap and just used it to create some layering.
Yeah, it looks good.
So this is my Crested Dragon pit. In here I've got my adult pair of Crested Dragons. They're pretty rad animals. These guys have a pretty big reputation for being some of the worst dragons to keep. I actually haven't found them too different to anything else. Basically just give them water, give them food, and they seem to go like wildfire. I've actually given them multiple basking spots as well, just because I thought that was a good way to try and help them out, and multiple hiding spots. And I mean, I've run 2 males in here and a female, no problems. These guys also bred for me, which is really exciting because they've been notorious to breed. But no, they're going quite well. This pit itself is, I think, 1 metre by 1.2. And about half a metre high, and it's basically just a 1,000 litre water container cut in half. So these guys are angleheads. I don't actually know too much about forms and colour types and things like that, but I've been told they're New South Wales type. Basically I've got these guys in a 4x4x2 bioactive enclosure. So there's 2 females and a male in here. I'm sure some people will argue the amount of space they've got to overkill. But it's quite nice. They're actually really active dragons for something that doesn't really have a high temperature need. Basically what I've got going in here is a layer of a drainage layer of hydro balls, then probably about 20 centimeters of sort of bioactive substrate. So that's things like peat moss. I've got good old Rich Grow all-purpose potting mix. A few, some sphagnum moss mixed in there, and then a bunch of leaves from the garden. But yeah, other than that, I've got a few plants in here. So I've got a Boston fern, which has flowered up quite nicely, or put out reproductive bodies recently. Air plants, a bromeliad that's actually died. So the reason that's died is that they go through like a cycle where they'll have that little one come off the side, and that's going to be the new plant, and then the original adult plant dies. I've got some pothos, devil's ivy in there. Didn't take off quite as well in this tank as the mountain dragon tank. I've got a spiderwort in here as well, which I was hoping to use as a bit of ground cover on this side of the tank. However, it's definitely just gone straight for the light and actually started growing up rather than across.
Great.
Which is frustrating. And then the maidenhair fern. I'd probably recommend to people, if you want to do bioactive, stay away from maidenhair ferns. They die pretty quickly. Not so much because they're a crappy plant, but just because, especially with dragons like this, they will beat the crap out of them. You do need something.
Forest dragons are terrible with plants. They
that's it.
Rip them up.
Especially like this one here. This, in its peak, was much more impressive.
Yeah.
And they just jump all over it. And saying that, it's really good. I've actually found it's really easy when these guys breed. They all lay their eggs directly right at the base of the roots. So I don't even need to sift through the tank. I just find all the eggs at the base of the roots. But yeah, so I mean, it's a great way. I mean, I haven't cleaned these guys in months. I think the only real cleaning I do is just knock off bits of poop that they've pooped on the branches or whatever. And even then, the cleanup crew I've got in here are slaters. So basically isopods from the garden. We've just discovered I've got wood roaches in there now, which is a new addition. There are springtails in there. There's these funky little red mite things that came with the springtails. They seem to be doing a good job. And I've actually got the European centipedes or whatever, millipede. Centipedes, I think they are. The little black and red things you find in the garden.
Okay, yep.
And they weren't an intentional one. I actually brought in all the logs untreated, and they were just living in the bark. That's basically it. It's a really cool way to go, and it's easy work.
You know, I love this tank. It's really, came out really good. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm hoping to replant it. I've actually got once I get another light globe, which this is an Arcadia Jungle Dawn 40 watt. And like, they're very, very, very good products, and I would recommend them for people wanting grow lights, but they are really expensive. So this light, and it's not a UV light or anything like that, cost me just on 160, I think it was. Other places sell them for up to 180. It's just a bit hard picking a place. And obviously for this size tank I can't go for a cheaper bulb. I need something with that high output to get things growing.
Yeah.
And you can tell the difference from the sides where the high output grow light is with all the plant life compared to the other side.
Yeah.
So ideally I would like to get a second one in there and put some ground cover plants and some climbing plants to climb over the background. But it's, you know, building a project.
Right, so here is probably one of my favourite little dragons you have, the mountain dragons. So, what's the story with these guys?
So yeah, these guys are really cool. They're probably one of the smaller dragons in Australia. They're definitely things that are smaller, but they're definitely one of the more, I guess, common captive small dragon species. So these guys are called, or their scientific name is Rankia, and they're found along the east coast. So basically from sort of, I think just north of Sydney and Gosford down all the way to Tasmania. And they're the only agamid lizard in Tasmania, which is also quite cool. I think the only
most southern agamid in the world, I believe.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if they were, for sure. But they're really easy to take care of. They're really active and engaging. One of my favourite things with these guys is I'll actually get a handful of black soldier fly larvae and throw them in, and they'll burrow down, pupate, and turn into flies. And as the flies are flying around, these guys will actually leap off the branches and leap off the background to try and catch the flies.
Yeah, they go nuts.
Which is like so awesome. A lot of people are sort of, I guess, misinformed about the age of these guys. So this female here is about five and a bit years old, and she's actually gravid at the moment. She's a bit thin. She hasn't been eating as well because I think she's coming up to egg laying time. But I mean, they do live a fairly long lifetime. A lot of people think they die after just a year or two. But awesome for people wanting to get into agamids, smaller agamids.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting some of these soon. So the enclosure is just a bioactive setup again.
Yep.
More plants.
Yep. So in this one I've got a few more plant species, and it's just because it's not as tall, so it's a bit easier to grow them.
Yep.
And this tank does have a bit more depth to it, which is nice.
Beautiful rock background.
Yeah,
very good.
I really like the universal rock backgrounds. They're not cheap. Picking them up secondhand is definitely the way to go. I've got a few secondhand, but yeah, they just make the tank so much more awesome. Plus the lizards use it like it's a whole extra layer. Like they will sort of run up the wall and
makes the enclosures three-dimensional.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I have these guys sleep up the top on the rock crevices up there quite a lot of the time as well.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Which is always nice.
So thanks for watching the videos, guys. Special thanks to Mitch letting me come around and check out all these awesome animals. Been bloody awesome.
Yeah, it's good showing everyone. Don't usually invite people around, so
yeah,
this is the easiest way to do it.
Just glad I can show off all the rare species and that. You know, love what you're doing. Make sure you check out his Facebook page. I'll leave a link down the bottom. What's it called again?
Weirds and Beards.
Weirds and Beards. I love it. He's always got babies for sale and stuff like that, so yeah, check it out. And if you're looking for animals, hit him up. Probably even advice too, give out good advice.
Yeah, happy to help. I mean, especially with people who've got lots of questions. I mean, especially about even weird stuff that I keep, if you want to get into it. Happy to give you all the answers I can. There, the